The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Let's go! What's that? It's gonna be a football game tonight now. No doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
Toss to White. He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl! Brady has his fifth! What a comeback! Watson. Touchdown!
Hunter Renfrow. Little man makes another enormous play. 1 second remaining.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Football to the Max. Yes, I apologize for the taking some weeks off here. That was not intended at all, but some things have happened, and just it was a lot. In soccer we would call it fixture congestion, schedule conflicts, whatever you want to call it. Lots of stuff going on for us. Of course, Erik is here with me, Mr. Erik Watkins. How are you?
I'm okay, although I will say in years past, this is when I call this time of year the doldrums. Not so much anymore.
Not so much going on right now. Soccer's got tournaments going on. Football's about to start training camp. It's still kind of in the doldrums, but there have been some things going on. Of course, we'll continue our series here. We'll finish out the AFC West, Oakland Raiders, San Diego Chargers. Of course, Erik covers the Oakland Raiders for Raider Ramble, so he has a handle on that squad there, so we'll get a nice perspective on them. They've had quite a bit going on in their offseason. That'll be nice to discuss. Ezekiel Elliot continues with his off-field issues, and former players, current owners, and current coaches for the Cowboys get involved in trying to kind of simmer him down a little bit. We'll discuss that. Ole Miss, their head football coach, of course, probably with the pending suspensions and all that stuff happening, he's decided to step down and quit after 6 seasons. We'll discuss that. Dante Fowler's been arrested, some franchise tag stuff, and more. But I need to start this show by saying that, unfortunately, and this has nothing to do with why we took off or anything, one of our core members that we've had for at least 2 years now, Randy Isbell, has stepped down. He decided that he's got too much going on, and he no longer has the ability to give his full effort to the show. So thankfully we found Erik just in time, because if not, it would have been me by myself doing this here. But so I'm very appreciative of Erik being here so that I can have a co-host. But just I'm going to miss Randy a lot. He brought us a lot of laughs and joy, but a lot of great analysis. He was our stats guy. He helped me out with watching games on Game Pass, which I know unfortunately we didn't do a lot of that last season, but the first season that we had him, he was very instrumental in that. He was our college football guy that we kind of relied on as well. So we're missing a big piece of the show. I don't know how long it's going to take before his name isn't in the intro, but we'll try to get that situated where we can get Erik's name in there. But Gary, of course, like I mentioned before, he would normally be on the Thursday, Friday morning episode, but we're doing this a little earlier than usual due to some of that fixture congestion. So it's going to be Erik and I for this one. Hopefully Gary will be back with us next week as we get a little bit closer to training camp starting. So let's start, I guess, with the news. this would have been a great one to have Gary on because, of course, being a Cowboys fan as well, just like I am, we've had to hear so much about the stuff with Ezekiel Elliot and the deal with there's a looming sense that he's going to be suspended for the allegations or the case with the sexual assault or whatever that is. That happened before he even joined the team. That it seems like the NFL has been investigating even before he stepped onto the field for the Cowboys and just have never been able to find anything on that. Then he got involved in there was a bar incident in which there was witnesses that say he was there. He was not put into the police report. And then they decided to suspend the investigation because they couldn't find enough witnesses. So this is where we stand right now on Elliott. Lots of Cowboys fans have been calling it a witch hunt for him, trying to put the Cowboys down a peg. As an outsider, someone that's not a Cowboys fan, how do you see the situation, Eric?
I don't necessarily see it as a witch hunt unless he gets suspended, and here's why. Am I a big Zeke Elliott fan? Somewhat. I'm the first to admit, if I have abs like he does, I would have been rocking a half shirt like he did at Ohio State. No complaints. Going out, being drafted, knowing he had a high stock, again, no complaints. My only complaints are, yes, I know you're in that young and dumb phase. I was in that phase myself. I just did completely different things. Different topic, different show.
Also been in that way as well. So
exactly.
You know what it's like.
Yeah. But you kind of have to be guarded about putting yourself in these situations. Yes, nothing's come up with it on a criminal sense, and even in the bar incident, the victim said he really didn't know who assaulted him, but still, eyes are on you, high-profile position, high-profile team, high-profile status overall, on top of all of your money situation with everything coming in. You gotta take a step back and say, yeah, I gotta do my stupidity in other forms because I don't want to even risk ruining a good deal.
Yeah, I think also we gotta remember he's 21?
Yeah, that's why I say the kind of stuff that I did in 21 on public, on film, I wouldn't necessarily want to be released en masse. So I get that. But me being ordinary 21-year-old college student versus Zeke being 21-year-old NFL running back, apples and oranges.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you have to, there's an adjustment that takes place.
Big time.
With all of a sudden coming from college where, that's kind of the lifestyle. You're partying, you're doing stuff. You might be in a fraternity, sorority,
Especially with Urban Meyer as your coach. I mean, I dealt with the kind of things that were going on in the ins and outs when he was head coach at Florida, so with him comes that atmosphere.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, obviously, the dude was popular, probably had a lot going on, So it's just, that's an adjustment you have to make to all of a sudden understand that you are now a professional football player, you're getting paid to do this, and you now have to act like a professional, and you cannot get yourself involved in bar fights. You have to learn that if a bar fight starts out, you need to clear the building, get your security to escort you out immediately. Don't get yourself involved with, this happened before he was in the league, so, that's what seems so weird about this. It's like, this happened pre-NFL. Leave it alone.
Yeah.
I get it. If you had proof that he actually assaulted a woman and all that stuff, fine. Get him, because this is the way of the world. We should be persecuting those people if they've actually done it. But it's
Right.
just, if this is another one of those claims of someone just claiming something and it didn't happen, you need to let it be until you have evidence that says otherwise. And so,
Yeah, and that's why I say let the investigatory process go as it is. And if the investigatory process, very thorough, very diligent, comes up with nothing, then it's a non-issue and you leave it alone. If you try to do anything, then yes, that's a bad look on you, and this becomes a witch hunt.
whew, wow, as we just saw a Mexican player just dive. But, it's... With the Mexico-Honduras Gold Cup quarterfinals going on as we were recording this, so if you hear us make some comments, apologize there, but it's the different football that you probably don't care about. But, it's just so, I don't want to talk at nauseam. Go ahead.
As an asterisk, it's being played at the home of the Arizona Cardinals. So there is a connection, folks.
There you go. I think Romo is right. I think he had the most level-headed approach in this, in saying he's young, he'll figure it out, he'll get it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be Dak. Not everybody's going to be Dak and be that humble, just really nice guy, but also know, what he's supposed to do. Some guys just, you have to go through that.
Exactly. Some guys have a wild phase, others don't. And looking at Zeke, and especially who he has around him, I'm like, okay, I trust him to figure this out, learn relatively quickly, and he'll get to a point to where if someone throws a chair, he ups and leaves.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones is also a guy that's kind of tends to just let you do your thing as long as you don't break the rules or stuff like that. I'm glad that he talked to him, obviously, but Jerry Jones is not we're gonna be disciplinary and whatever. He lets guys do what they're supposed to do, and then
he's like, look, I'm this guy. I've made my money and lived my life this way. As long as you win and you don't be too stupid, I'm okay with that.
Right. And so, I think we're just going to have to wait and see on this, and if anything ever comes out of it, if they just decide to drop it, and hopefully that's all. Just to finish out Cowboy news here, the Cowboys did re-sign Justin Durant on a 1-year contract, as Mexico already scored within 3 minutes. And you have... Did you expect anything less? Not like Honduras has been great in this tournament. But anyway, Justin Durant actually used to be with the Cowboys before. He went around to some other teams, came back to the Cowboys, played really well last season. So no surprise here that they re-signed him. Glad that they did. They need the defensive help at this point with how much they lost in the secondary. So anything they can do in that front seven to make sure that they have depth is good at this point. Anything you want to say on this here?
The prodigal son returns, and the better you bolster your defense, the better of a season you'll have, especially if you want to account for any potential sophomore slump from Dak. So,
yeah, and also
hedging your bets is always good.
You also have a Chris Johnson getting re-signed as well by the Cardinals. So, yeah, I don't think that was a total surprise as well. David Johnson handled a lot of the workload last season, but Chris Johnson still proved he could go a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, is he the same, CJ2K, all this and that? No, he's not. But if he gives you enough in the tank to where he can get you, 6, 7, maybe 800 yards over the course of the season, give you 10, 15 carries a game, that's fantastic in the backfield.
Certainly. And this is the right call. Obviously, if he doesn't pan out, didn't spend a lot of money on him, and it's not that big a deal for you if you're the Cardinals. One move that was surprising here is this is a guy that obviously has a little bit of celebrity from being in a movie and everything else, and he found out. Of course, I'm talking about Michael Orr here, a lineman for the now Carolina Panthers. He obviously was part of the Ravens when he had the movie come out, Blindside and all that. So he was released by the Panthers because he failed a physical. Ron Rivera basically saying that his health comes first. We've got to understand that, and apparently it's a brain issue. So, which is very scary. He says the brain is a scary thing. You have to be careful with it, and yes, you do. Michael, glad that you understand that. You're only 31. You got your whole life ahead of you still. Don't.
Exactly. You've got a ring. You've played in 2 Super Bowls. You've got your legacy. Nothing left to prove. Don't go and be like a Wes Welker and come out and say, oh, I'm not worried, and look at all the concussions that he's suffered. No. I applaud you, Michael, for being very precautionary, and whatever you decide to do, however things go, both in the short term and the long term, very best of luck to you.
Yeah, totally agree. Hopefully, they can figure this out and he can be playing again. Hopefully it's not too serious.
No.
So, speaking of, we talked about contracts for some guys. 2 important, very important figures for their teams, Le'Veon Bell and Kirk Cousins. They were the 2 guys on watch when the franchise tag designations were made, and they had until last week to figure out long-term deals, or they now only had the option of signing your franchise tag. And so this happened for Kirk Cousins and Le'Veon Bell. Of course, Cousins had already played on the 1-year deal previously last year, and the GM for the Redskins wanted to let everybody know about what's going on here with Kirk Cousins, that they are trying to get a long-term deal done with him, but Kirk Cousins isn't too interested in what they offered here. So here's what he had to say. Our goal was to sign Kirk to a long-term contract. He does say Kurt about 20 times, though, so he says his name wrong. I want to mention
sign number 1. What?
Hello, GM. GM, you need to learn. This is your quarterback. This isn't like player number 53 on your roster. This is your quarterback. How do you not know his first name?
Well,
anyway,
that shows you how much control Dan Snyder really has over things. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dan Snyder doesn't know his first name either. But so here's what he had to say. On May 2nd, right after the draft, we made Kirk an offer that included the highest fully guaranteed amount upon signing for a quarterback in NFL history, $53 million, and a guaranteed total of $72 million for injury. The deal would have made him at least the second highest paid player by average per year in NFL history. But despite our repeated attempts, we have not received anything from Mr. Cousins. I love how the computer decides that it wants to make its own decision about whether it wants to let you read a page or not when you're trying to do something important. Damn you, PC. Anyway, his point is that, look, they tried to make Kirk Cousins a really high-paid player, and he chose to stick with the franchise tag amount. The 5-year extension was worth a little less than $110 million. When you start breaking that down, it doesn't seem like the major money that they're offering him. You got to think about all these different things here.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accounted for when they're sitting here just talking about amounts.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think Cousins is right to not even give a counter offer or anything? Just say, no, I'm just going to go with my deal and bet on myself again.
Let me preface this by saying I've been on the fence about Kirk Cousins, even dating back to his days at Michigan State. A lot of my family is up in the D.C. area. My sister's a diehard Redskins fan. So I'm somewhat close to the team. That said, Kirk, you're kind of playing yourself here. Yes, you had all these big stats.
I should know, too, that Kirk Cousins said that his major concern is the organization doesn't seem to be stable right now. And he wants to know that the organization is stable before he signs on long term because, they fired the GM. They did a lot of different things because he's been there.
Okay, Kirk, ask yourself. You've seen Dan Snyder run this team for a very long time. You kind of got the office when you were drafted there and you started there. You really think things are going to change? I mean, Snyder and Jerry Jones are kind of cut from the same cloth. They don't just want to be on the business side, they also want to be on the football side.
Right,
That's
but
not
Jerry
going to
Jones
change
is a much
anytime
smarter
soon.
guy now that he's let his kids kind of control things.
Exactly. And Snyder isn't that smart, and things aren't going to change. So, what are you really doing here? And, okay, you bet on yourself. Yes, you had that statistically magical season. Have you noticed how statistics are being skewed because of all of the offensive rules that have come about in the last few years? Do you really think that with all of last year's film, you're going to be able to repeat that? You can say that I'm down in a 64-ounce thing of Haterade all you want, but I personally don't think so.
Well, he'll get to disprove once again that you're certainly going to like that when he lights up things. So, or that's what he's hoping anyway.
Yeah, he'll like that in the regular season. How things work out come playoff time?
True.
Oh,
but hey,
right.
You know what? The playoffs, I think Washington is, I feel like Dan Snyder's being realistic about their playoff chances. And even if they do make it, that this team isn't built yet to be going very far, considering, the elites in the NFC. And this division isn't a guarantee with how everybody in the division, except for maybe the Cowboys, has gotten better. So,
and this kind of leads to my point. You're betting on yourself. Okay, say you throw for 4,700 yards and the team goes 6-10. How's the market going to see you after that? Think about that, Kirk.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what winds up happening with him, obviously. So, it's, I don't know. This is one of those where it could all fall flat on his face, or it works for him again. Because he keeps getting big money from the franchise tag, and if I'm him, I'm going where the money is, but there's only so many times where you can consistently sit here and get things to go your way. So, well, we go from one big player to the other. Le'Veon Bell also did not get his big contract, and Ike Taylor says that Le'Veon Bell wants to be paid as a number 1 running back or number 2 receiver type money. The only problem with Le'Veon Bell is he has an issue with staying on the field. If there's one thing that will keep you from getting a lot of money, it's staying on the field. Right? Or,
Absolutely. As the old cliche goes, the best ability is durability. You stay healthy, you don't get suspended for things green or otherwise, and you will further your chances in the meritocracy that is the NFL. I think the Steelers are kind of doing the right thing. They're saying, okay, you're a part of this team because you've done so much, but we still don't trust you 100% to give you a long-term deal and to give you the money that you want. And why the number 2 wide receiver money that he had to throw that?
Well, what happened is that he was the Steelers. Number 2 receiver last year behind Antonio Brown.
Oh.
He was also the first player in NFL history to average at least 100 rushing yards and 50 receiving yards per game. So, when you got stuff like that in your corner, you can kind of...
True.
What he's asking for mainly is he's already getting paid $12 million under this franchise tag, right? He wants 15. He wants $3 more million, and he wants a bit more guaranteed money.
The $15 million I question. The guaranteed money I have no issue with, because if I'm looking at it from a GM's perspective and I'm thinking, okay, number 1 receiver we got, number 2 receiver. Wait, what? We need to fix that ASAP.
Right, but we've seen with Roethlisberger, and technically you do if Martavis Bryant comes back and plays like he did before. But, I think, and the guy you drafted, I think he's going to do good things as well. Where maybe Bell, it doesn't have to be relied on like that. The problem was that the receivers just kept dropping balls. Sammy Coates dropped the ball all the time. Ladarius Green, you started not being able to rely on him that much. They ended up releasing him. Jesse James is more of a blocking back, even though he was catching balls and everything. So the Steelers were sort of limited on the offensive side like that. And I don't blame Le'Veon Bell for saying, look, man, I'm a dual threat here. Pay me.
No, and I get that he's a dual threat, and I get that he should be paid. I'm just thinking, while you're a dual threat, there's a lot of things that had to break the right way for that dual threat ability to be discovered and cultivated the way that it was. Even with his greatness, which I do not deny, that's not going to be consistent, not from the receiving end. Now, as a running back, hey, get that number 1 paper, but also, you got number 1 talent, you don't have number 1 mentality all the time. That does count against you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Certainly for him. So another guy that was in contract talks, Mr. Greg Olsen, found out pretty quickly, as did most of the team last week, that their GM, David Gettlemen, has been fired and let go by the owner, Mr. Richardson, and Jerry Richardson, that is, and a lot of speculation as to whether or not the Thomas Davis and Greg Olsen contract talks were an issue as to why Gettleman was being fired, because Gettleman's known for not paying guys, obviously. Josh Norman didn't get paid under Gettleman and everything else. So, and lots of guys came out on Twitter saying that, it was because of him that they had to leave the team and all that sort of stuff. And so, the statement was pretty much that generic statement of the owner felt like he did something that he needed to do. But the guy that they brought back in was the GM before Gettleman came in with the Panthers. So that's sort of interesting. That you let that GM go, bring in Gettleman, then you let him go and bring back the old GM.
Okay, this is the most suspicious oops maneuver I've seen in quite some time. I mean, if you're showing the pattern of issues with contracts, I'm all well and good with letting a GM go for that. Because initially everybody's thinking overreaction for on-field performance and 6-10 and blah, blah, blah. If it was just for that, then I wouldn't be so fond. But, what's Jerry Richardson really doing? I mean, is it going back to familiarity? Are you trying to chase whatever you were able to do and what clicked that got you to the Super Bowl nearly 15 years ago? What's the motive? What do you think is missing? What are you seeing that we're not here? That's what I want to know.
Well, I mean, it's not like Gettlemen hadn't been there for a while. He'd been there for years, and then now he makes a decision because I just wouldn't be surprised. It has to be something with the players, right? Because if not,
yeah. Again,
what are you doing here?
If the pattern is showing contracts, not getting paid, and especially with how ugly the Norman situation was at the end and all the things that came out about that, they made the right move. But my thing isn't so much with that move, it's the subsequent move. What's going on there?
Yeah, I think it's more of he trusts him, right? He trusts the old GM. And instead of going and hiring, finding somebody else that may not work with you, may not work with the coach, let's get the guy that was in here before. And so he has a track record, right, of getting guys paid in contracts.
Okay, so then why let the old GM leave in the first place?
Well, maybe it was something with the coach or just, you know.
But you laid out everything as it was. Why go this and that? It's like a guy has a decent girlfriend, things don't work for one reason or another, you break up, you move on with the new girl, that relationship goes south, and then you get back together with your ex. Normally you think if signs were obvious with your ex, you stay away. If signs weren't obvious, you give it a chance to work out.
Sometimes you gotta go with somebody else, though, before you figure out that that old ex wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's just, I get it. It's just, to me, weird. And believe me, I'm not the one to talk with my issues with women, but I can still say it's weird.
You're right, but what I'm saying is sometimes you got to see other people. Then, after you see those other people, you go, you know what? Maybe our relationship wasn't too bad, and maybe this is what Jerry Richardson was figuring out now when he hires the old GM. But, speaking of something that a team needs to figure out, the Detroit Lions. Hello, what are you doing here? He was suspended. I'm talking about Armani Bryant here. He has now been suspended 4 games again for violating the NFL policy or program for substance abuse.
Oh, God.
He was suspended twice last season for violating the NFL policy on performance-enhancing drugs.
Oh, look.
And for violating the league's policy on drug abuse. Why are you even signing him? He obviously has a problem.
Oh, how does he even with any team with these? And did they say?
And the Browns released you, so there's. Come on.
My God! Wow. Yeah. Congratulations, Detroit. Fans are going to start breaking out the paper bags if you keep doing stuff like this. I've seen that movie. It don't end well.
At least they figured out they shouldn't have playoff banners for just getting to the playoffs.
Okay, I think about this, though. I completely agree, but when you do that with a team that hangs up playoff banners, look at their playoff history. I mean, when was the last time they won a championship? 1957?
Yes.
Okay, then. With the city as bad Detroit is, and the only time that the Lions are in the Hall of Fame is for becoming the first team to go 0-16 in a season. They had to cling to some sort of hope and good memories, but they wise up and then Detroit, you're an enigma. The Ford family, yeah, something's up. Maybe, I don't know, is something going on with your cars while you still own this team? What? There's too many question marks. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Speaking of question marks, a guy in your town here, Dante Fowler, arrested on Tuesday for simple battery and mischief. He punched a man after a verbal confrontation and then stepped on the man's glasses, breaking a lens. He paid a $650 bond, which is nothing for him.
That's like pennies.
And was released the next morning after going in at 8:30. He was arrested at 8:30, probably booked around like 10 or so.
Yeah, trust me, our system down here works fast in certain situations, if you know what I mean.
Right. The arrest comes 1 week before Fowler and his teammates are scheduled to report for training camp, and Fowler is subject to potential league discipline of the NFL's personal conduct policy, so probably looking at some games here.
Probably a couple.
This is not the first time he's been arrested. He's already been arrested last year for a misdemeanor assault and resisting arrest in Miami-Dade. So, of course, he got that dismissed by entering a diversion program. But you know what? Obviously, already showing some issues. This is after having to miss his first year because of the torn ACL in training camp. I mean, again, look, he's 22. Let's use the same deal as we did with Elliot. Let's not use. I mean, this is different though. You're punching people.
Yeah, with Zeke, that argument holds up because wrong place, wrong time. Dante, bruh, this is Jacksonville. You don't get how this town works. And I'm going to tell you right now, even with where you are, it ain't that favorable to you. Check yourself. Come on.
Yeah, you just gotta control those emotions a bit there.
Check your temper. I would recommend doing something, but then the NFL would have issue with that too. So I gotta shut my mouth. But
right, you know, doesn't always work out the special way you think it should. If the NFL is going to have an issue with that too, but
which they shouldn't. But again, another topic, another show.
I hope that he understands eventually here that
he will
do these things.
He will. In this town, he will.
Just cannot do these things at all. So the last thing we're going to talk about before we get to our teams here, this big news. Ole Miss announcing Thursday that head coach Hugh Freeze has resigned, effective immediately. Freeze made a 1-minute call. Freeze university-issued phone to a number associated with a female escort service and its ongoing legal battle with former coach Houston Nutt. Whatever. I mean, you know what? He's saying it's a misdial. I could maybe believe that or whatever, but this is also...
Use a damn burner phone. Use a fake number. Use WhatsApp. Use Telegram. Oh, not that I'm entirely speaking from experience, but Jesus. Ugh.
Matt Luke is going to be the interim coach. Of course, he was the co-offensive coordinator last year for the Rebels. This is, of course, after Ole Miss self-imposed a postseason ban for 2017 after the stuff that came out with Laremy Tunsil and everything else.
Secondary question. You're in the middle of damn Mississippi. What are you really expecting to get?
Well, okay. This isn't a show for that, but I mean,
that just dawned on me. I'm like, yeah.
It's just he had a losing record in SEC play. He did have a 39-25 record at Ole Miss. They were playing well, and it's just surprising.
Yeah, they were playing well. They just weren't Bama.
Well, I mean, nobody's going to be Bama, but it's just...
Exactly! It's Bama and everybody else in that conference.
You aren't lying, man. But just... not a good look for Ole Miss right now. When you have the allegations on you, you already self-imposed the postseason ban to try to get the NCAA off your back. Some issues there.
There are way too many questions I have in this situation.
What are
what
are some of them here?
What was he expecting to get? Was it really a 1 minute call because it was rounded up, or was it just a few seconds? How did you get that number? You laugh, but I am serious. Look, I have done some things in my life, and I realized that those things were a culmination of a very lengthy chain of events. A to B to C, and eventually to Z. With those, knowing that, what was the chain of events here? What really happened, and why are you really quitting?
That's what I'd like to know. Don't know if we'll ever really find out the real reason unless he says it himself. But
and Hugh, let me tell you, 10s there are like 3s elsewhere. Remember, still Mississippi. Louisiana ain't too far away. Just saying.
Whew. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into our two teams that we're discussing here on the show. Let's start with the Oakland Raiders, which again you cover them for Raider Ramble, so you're very familiar with the Raiders. Of course, they made a lot of news with the Derek Carr deal. We talked about that on your first show. We also, one of their guard got a big contract as well. Which Derek Carr left money on the table for him to get that money. So
a good man.
How nice of you to honor your offensive line there. Things seem to be on the up and up, unless you're a Raiders fan who now knows that your team is headed to Las Vegas. Do you think that, considering how well they played last season, should people expect, barring another injury that affects how Derek Carr throws or something like that, that the Raiders should be, let's say, Super Bowl contenders?
Even with my coverage with Raider Ramble, shout out to all the guys there, I can't quite put them as Super Bowl contenders, mainly of teams like the Patriots. Now, there may or may not be voodoo dolls in the likeness of Tom Brady wearing number 12 jerseys in the making. I personally can neither confirm nor deny any attestations to that nature. However, that said, a playoff run, a considerably deep playoff run, is in the cards if everything goes well. They addressed a lot of issues on defense in the draft. They even bolstered a little bit of depth on the offensive line by getting the offensive tackle out of Florida. And I don't want to keep the rumor mill churning, but there's been some things linking potentially Megatron coming out of retirement to come to Oakland, which I think would be a bit more of a hindrance than a benefit.
Just stop it, Oakland. Stop it. You went and got Marshawn Lynch out of retirement. Now you're going to go get Calvin Johnson. Now, Johnson obviously much younger than Lynch. So, my goodness.
And again, I think that would be a hindrance because look at with Detroit. I don't want Derek Carr to automatically
I don't know that, though. I think Calvin Johnson would understand that he has to do what's best for the team to win a championship. He can't make it all about himself or say, I want the ball or whatever. I mean, it's not like they don't already have Amari Cooper, who's a big-time receiver as well. But even Cooper knows, hey, he's going to have to throw it to Crabtree or something else.
I would think you have that Crabtree, you have Cordarrelle Patterson, who
Jared Cook is now there as your tight end.
Yes.
So,
and I even said with the kind of package that Minnesota used for Patterson, I think that he would be even more dangerous and be leaned towards use as a kick returner rather than a number 3 receiver.
Right, yeah, because you still got Seth Roberts there, who's a favorite receiver for Derek Carr. So,
you
know, and you got Walford, who is, I think, still very underrated as far as tight ends go. So, you know, he's got the pieces already. You bring Calvin Johnson here, you're talking about putting them over the top as far as the offense goes. And again, like, he does give you a dynamic that you don't have, right? I mean, Amari Cooper can burn you. He can be a possession guy, but Calvin Johnson is a go-get-it receiver. He can be the guy that runs across the middle, has no problem getting whacked, and will get to those 10 yards if he needs to. And I just would think that he would be smart and go, all right, I didn't win being the number 1 guy and the focus being on me in Detroit. This team's already got something. Let's come in here and be a veteran and just get what I get as long as the team wins, not make it about, oh, I got to get the ball all the time.
Right. And I will say this. If that happens, if he comes there and all they have their sit down, they have their come to Jesus moment, everything works in harmony, then they have a Super Bowl contending offense. They do. The only question would be, with the defensive draft, how are those young players going to step up? Because if they can even show a marked improvement, 20% better than last year, then watch out. Yeah. They would become really second, third favorites in the AFC. But a lot has to happen for that to come to fruition.
I don't see how this is one of the things, like, other than losing Andre Holmes, which you could make the case that, yeah, he was important, but he was somebody you could have lose if you had to lose somebody. I don't know how this team got any. This team only got better in the offseason. There's nothing where they got worse.
They really did. I looked at their main flaws going into this offseason. Offensive line. They are even looking to at least somewhat address depth issues at quarterback. I mean, that's still a little suspicious, but I'd say that's a lot better situation behind Derek Carr than it was last year by a mile.
Right. I mean, so what are you sort of excited about coming into training camp? Is it Marshawn Lynch to see how he responds? How he plays, or is it that defensive backfield? What is it for?
It's really more the defensive backfield. I know what I'm going to get out of Marshawn Lynch, and like I said with Chris Johnson in Arizona, Marshawn Lynch, power, 700-800 yards. He's not going to be the main guy, but he's going to be a great tool. I want to see the defensive backfield. How are these safeties going to work in coverage? Are they really going to create one of the best defensive backfields in the league to allow a guy like Khalil Mack even more freedom up front to get to the quarterback? How is that all going to gel, and how soon?
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. I am interested to see how much they play him in the preseason because he does need to get that rust off.
Mm-hmm.
Does he play well? How much of it you're going to have to temper with the fact that this is preseason? If he looks too good, once you get into you're playing the regular defenses all the time with the schemes and everything, how good is he really going to look then? That's an issue. And then if you bring in a Calvin Johnson, that's another veteran who now has to get the rust off. How long is that going to go into the season if you got a problem? But, I mean, obviously, you do have an offense that works. You kept pretty much everybody for Derek Carr. I mean, offensively, I don't think there's a lot to be concerned about. It really is that defense that had a problem stopping people last year.
Yeah, and the good thing is you've got time because you have an offense that works. You've got at least a somewhat favorable schedule that works. And let's face it, the LA Chargers, boy, people haven't said that since the early 60s. They're in a little bit of a building process still. The Broncos, question mark, interrobang. So you narrow down your division to yourselves, Kansas City. The fact that you've only got that as competition, that sets yourself up with a lot more breathing room to make these moves and make these adjustments as the season goes on.
Yeah, I agreed. I would like to say don't sleep on that boy from Arkansas, Keon Hatcher, at receiver.
Mm-mm.
Don't know how much he's going to get to do anything, but dude is a stud.
Yeah, and he'll have his chance, especially preseason and everything, to shine. See how that goes. There's a lot of depth, and I wrote about this for Raider Ramble. A lot of depth at wide receiver. I had to focus on just the main 4 or 5 guys, and then the top 2 or 3 that's competing for the number 3 spot. So,
yeah, lots of depth going on. Then, if Aldon Smith ever gets to get off that commissioner's suspension list, I mean, that's another guy you get to add on defense.
Well, another guy to add on defense, but you want him to play like a Raider in 2017, not like a Raider in 1975. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, very true. Can't argue with that on there. Honestly, we know what the Raiders are. If they're not number 2 in the AFC, or at least favorites to be right there behind the Patriots, they should already be there because of this talent on paper. But obviously you don't play the games on paper, and so many things can happen. Right now, Oakland just looks really, really, really good, and it's so hard not to pick them to be major players.
And I will say this, historically, they did win one for the road before they moved to LA. And there's a little bit of a time frame before Vegas goes down, with stadium-wise and everything. I'm just throwing that into the universe.
You are not wrong, sir. So let's move our focus over to the Los Angeles Chargers, the other team that will be playing in LA this year. Perhaps maybe the better team that plays in LA if you look at where the Rams have been. No doubt this team got better as the season went on, especially defensively. Joey Bosa proved that holdout was not for show. He held out, but he held up his end of the bargain and played fantastically last season for them. They come in and add Gus Bradley, former Jaguars coach, now back at his more favorable position as coaching the defense for the Chargers. A defense that was already getting better as the season went on.
I would be scared if I were opposing offenses. I've seen what Gus Bradley did in Seattle. I've seen, whatever it was that he did here.
The Jaguars were getting better. They were figuring it out as the season went on last year.
They were, and again, we have our discussion off air, and I'll go into depth a little bit more of that, what's up and what's down when we get to the Jaguars here, but he's proved a lot, and you give him the kind of talent that's already existing, be afraid.
You are not wrong there at all, and just in the backfield, the defensive backfield, they are getting much better, adding Casey Hayward. They, of course, have Verrett as well, who's fantastic and been fantastic for a few years now. He's been their huge guy up there. But I think the focus right now for the Chargers, if everybody can stay healthy, and that's a huge if considering that last year it felt like they just lost a receiver every other game.
Mm-hmm.
If that receiving core can stay healthy, that is perhaps one of the best in the entire NFL. You're looking at Keenan Allen, Dontrell Inman, who did really well. Travis Benjamin can now go back and maybe do punt returns and kick returns. He doesn't have to be a third down slot guy now. Antonio Gates is on the old side at this point. Don't know how much he's got left, but Hunter Henry is there to take that spot and run with it. And I can tell you from being an Arkansas man that this guy is for real. We got to see it a bit last year, but, I think he's really going to break out this year. And then you again, on defense, they have so many key positions filled where they didn't before. So it's just, if Gus Bradley can get that team together, you're looking at a much improved Chargers team who I think will make this a 4-team or 3-team race that the Broncos drop off. All those close games that they lost last season, we could see them winning them.
Yeah, I mean, law of averages states that you can't have that many heartbreakers 2 years in a row. And yes, they are well improved, but they do have a couple key older players, so they're going to make it interesting in a lot of ways. I just don't think they're going to make it that interesting.
I think that's fair enough. They might be a year away still with the coaching change and all that.
Coaching change, getting set up, some players complaining about housing discrimination in the Carson area and thereabouts. And there's transition years don't typically work. Give the Chargers this year to get settled. Then next year, and then whenever they move into their stadium, because they're not going to keep playing at the StubHub Center. So they're entering phase 1 of the LA chapter. I don't really see them as significant contenders until they get to phase 3.
What do you think of the Mike Williams already hurt and possibly having season-ending back surgery this quickly? I mean, obviously he's a rookie with a class of receivers that he's walking into that was already pretty damn good. So,
but
do they really lose something? I think obviously they lose depth.
They lose depth, but they don't lose much more than that. I think it's kind of bad luck with Williams because he loses this potentially year. And even you're coming in as a rookie, you want that first year under your belt, no matter how much time you actually see on the field. Now you're going through this all over again, and you're going to have to go through this again next year. I feel for him.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, obviously the biggest question for the Chargers for a little while has been the offensive line, which I feel like has improved, but I think there's still an issue that you're worried about when you're looking at this offensive line. And then, how many years can Phillip Rivers really play at this high level? Are you worried at all about? Do we start seeing any kind of diminishing on Phillip Rivers?
Are you at the point of diminishing returns? And with comments that he's made in the past, how much has he really invested mentally into this? Because I am really surprised with the career that he had with San Diego already, that when it was announced the team moved, he didn't follow through with his guns and staying in San Diego and just retiring or do whatever. Now, the fact that he has 7 or 8 kids, I don't know how much of a factor that has in it. Philip, we could have had a chat about that several years ago, even in your North Carolina State days, but, yeah, there's some intangibles going on in his head, and combine the fact that
but let's think about it, though. What contender, other than the Broncos, and I don't think he wants to go in division just to be, I think he would have some loyalty to the Chargers there.
Yeah, and that's why I said with the
what contender is around that really needs a quarterback right now.
Well, and that's why I say you wouldn't necessarily need him on a contender. He would be riding the pine, and that's why I thought he would just be done. He wasn't going to go to another team. He was just going to flat out retire. I would have understood that. So the fact that he's still with the team, with, as you say, a questionable offensive line, and as an older quarterback, getting hurt, you don't heal as quickly. How are you mentally into this, knowing that this is pretty much it? You're going to be a one-team guy. I don't know. There's too many intangibles, and I would love to sit down with him on a couch. Talk this out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine, right? He's got so much loyalty to the Chargers at this point. I don't think you're worried about that. I worry about just he's 35. I mean, he's performed at this level for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to hit that? It's kind of like the Tom Brady thing, right? Like, you're going, man, he can't possibly keep doing this all the time. But again, I feel like we need to start thinking about the Chargers more seriously. And there's so many things to look at for them in this training camp. I mean, is Forrest Lamp going to become the guy that they drafted? Again, the offensive line is a huge factor for the Chargers. If they can block and give Phillip Rivers time, he's going to find these receivers. Can they stay healthy is another issue. Can Melvin Gordon once again be the guy he was last season for the Chargers, where he really came into form and became the guy that they drafted after having a just dismal first season with the team? And then that defense, can they take that step forward and finally be, under Gus Bradley, be that defense that can shut down people?
Yeah, personally, I think they can, and that's going to solve one problem, but you still got about 3 or 4 more. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. This is phase 1. If they can be 500 or thereabouts in phase 1, that gives me confidence for phase 2 and eventually phase 3.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can overachieve, though, so there's always that chance a couple of things go your way. The Chargers, could be leading that division for a while. You never know. So
even if they overachieve, I'll be willing to give them 10 wins. But even if they get 10 wins, you're still fighting potentially Kansas City or Oakland for second. I mean, is it really that far-fetched to say the winner of the AFC West is going to the playoffs with potentially a 12-4 record?
Wouldn't be surprised. Then you could also make a case that maybe all 3 teams there in the AFC West make it.
Maybe. And because
if the South beats each other up like we think they probably will.
Oh God, the South is going to be something of a dumpster fire.
And then the North becomes that whole where the Steelers kind of barely make it out there again. Then, you never know. That AFC West could overperform, and you're looking at quite a few teams from there. But we'll get into that more towards when the season begins, when we do our whole season preview episode. But yes, so this will conclude our look at the AFC West. We will do a AFC. Of course, we've done the AFC East. This is the AFC West. We will now do the AFC North. Next week, on the Tuesday morning show, we'll be looking at the Steelers and Browns, and then we'll be looking at the Bengals and Ravens on the Friday morning edition. Hopefully Gary will be back for that. I have friends that are, of course, one of our staff members, Mike, who does the fantasy podcast, he's a Steelers fan. So I might see if we can get him on. Of course, another friend of ours is a Ravens fan, so maybe we'll see if we can work that out somewhere. But yeah, lots to think about there. There was already a report out many former Patriots talking about if Garoppolo had gone on the Browns, they could have been a playoff team. But man,
I'm gonna reserve comment until my next show.
We'll see that. So, all right. Well, hopefully you enjoy what we had to say here. We talked about quite a bit of news, and then also the teams, this training camp. Next week or a week and a half, we'll be talking about what's going on at training camp, and the preseason will be here, and there'll be games to talk about finally. Oh my gosh.
Hard to believe. August 3rd, we will be talking about preseason NFL football.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. And then, college will be coming up. We'll be doing some college stuff as well as that starts getting closer. We'll be doing a preview for that, making predictions and stuff like that as it gets closer to that, late August date. So stay tuned. Lots coming up for us. Of course, if you like what you heard, Football to the Max is where you go subscribe. You'll get every episode. Or you can go subscribe to the whole W2M network, which you get not only our 2 episodes that we do a week here. You get the Soccer to the Max show that I do with Eric and Miss Rachel McCrigger. And you also get our Wrestling to the Max show, MMA, video games, all the entertainment stuff, everything. So we have so much stuff for you just on the podcast side. It doesn't even go towards W2Mnet.com that has more. So definitely you want to continue to check that out, and let us know what you think. We use YouTube where you can comment. You can comment on W2Mnet.com's post. You can give us a shout at Squid Sportshead, at WTMSean on Twitter, wherever, to let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you thought about our team coverage here. If you're a Raiders fan or a Chargers fan, reach out. What do you think are some of the things you're looking forward to training camp?
Hashtag Raider Nation.
Yes. I don't know what the Chargers one is right now, but go until next week when we talk about some more football. We'll see you later, everybody.
Peace.